Hey guys, it's Randy with Lowbuck LS here again, and this week we're going to do an unboxing of this LS wiring harness from BP Automotive and compare it to the Chinese wiring harness that we did an unboxing and first look at a couple videos ago. So if you're interested in seeing a comparison between an American-made LS harness and a Chinese-made LS harness, stick around, we'll get right into it. Alright guys, so like I mentioned a couple videos ago, we did an unboxing of a Chinese wiring harness from Nathan Wei. He sells those on various Facebook groups, and after I did that video I got a message from Bill, who's the owner of BP Automotive, asking if I was interested in getting my hands on an American-made wiring harness, and so I said of course. So it took a bit for it to get here, but we've got our hands on it now, so we're going to do an unboxing and have a look at these two wiring harnesses. Well, the first thing a lot of people ask is where it ships from. This one is from BP Automotive in Columbia, Kentucky. This Chinese one shipped from Shanghai, China. The funny thing about that is this one actually came in quicker, I think because it was on FedEx. It arrived maybe 5 or 6 days after I got the tracking number for it. Whereas this one, I think it was almost 2 weeks, but that's not BP Automotive's fault. That would be the US Postal Service's fault, and kind of just the nature of cross-border shipping between the US and Canada. It always seems to take long. But like I said, that's not BP Automotive's fault. And I probably could have got it here quicker if I would have paid for FedEx or UPS or express shipping rather than USPS. So the other thing I wanted to mention, just like last time, this is not a sponsored video. I paid for this with my own money, so trying to keep things unbiased and do an honest comparison for you guys. So let's go ahead with getting this box opened up and have a look at it. Okay, let's tear into this box and see what we're dealing with. Bill and a couple pamphlets. Oh yeah, he also sent some samples of some crimps, and he sent me some fusible links. That's one thing I forgot to mention about the Chinese harness. It doesn't have fusible links in the main power wires, so Bill was nice enough to throw a couple of these in. We'll have a look at that later. These are, looks like some examples of how they do the what would be soldering of the injector leads, but I think BP uses like a ultrasonic welding or soldering process, so we'll have a look at those closer a bit later, and I may even cut into that Chinese harness a bit just to compare the method of crimping. If I don't want to destroy that harness, so if it's accessible, we'll have a look at it. So just gonna get rid of some of these packing peanuts. So we got the actual harness box here now. Some instructions, slow down hot rod, and some QC. And this is another thing I was pretty impressed with about BP. He's got a video on his YouTube channel. I'll put a link to his YouTube and his company website in the description, but he's got a real fancy computerized system of doing the quality control and stuff on these harnesses. So this is the test report from that, saying that it's passed QC and everything's good on it. So let's get it out of the box here. The other thing I'm noticing right off the bat is every connector is labeled with where it's supposed to go, or I kind of know from experience, but like on the Chinese harness, you guys saw when I laid it out there, I had to basically put a post-it note by each connector with a Sharpie, whereas he's got it all labeled for you. There's your 4L80E connector, input speed sensor. So we'll get this all out of the box. There's a fuse block mounting bracket. Threw in a sticker. I can always use another sticker for my toolbox. And then here is the instruction manual. So alright guys, workbench is kind of a mess here today, but got both wiring harnesses kind of laid out side by side here so we can have a look. And let's get the big question that everybody's going to have out of the way. Price difference. Chinese harness, $350-ish for drive-by cable, Multec truck injectors, Gen 3. Yeah, they're compatible harnesses anyways, and the BP Automotive harness is $610 as of this shooting. So BP is definitely slightly more, but I'll leave it up to you guys to decide whether it's worth it or not. But anyways, let's have a look here at some of the differences I can see right off the bat. First thing that stands out to me is the quality of the wire. In one of the brochures, or maybe on one of his videos or something, I know Bill said this is TXL wire, which has like a higher temperature resistance, and you can even, it feels more flexible, and the insulation on this feels hard. And I watched one of the videos on Bill's channel there where he gets a heat gun out, and the insulation on the Chinese wire typically melts and bubbles and gets destroyed at quite a bit lower temperature than the TXL wire. So especially for like your power wires and stuff that are down by the starter and the exhaust, I'm confident the TXL wires will have better temperature resistance. So next thing I notice is the BP harness has these covers on the ECM connectors, which do a better job of strain relief on the wires coming out of it. Like you can see how on this connector, when it's bolted to the ECM, the wires are just going to be hanging there. So as it vibrates, and basically I'm going to have to put some kind of clamp or something around here to keep those wires from flexing and vibrating, whereas these ones, because of these covers and the zip ties here, kind of have the wires secured better. Next thing I notice is the fuse block on the BP unit is more compact, and the relays and fuses are more compact. One question I'm not sure about with these being smaller relays, if the current rating, let's have a look there. It says those are, I'll turn it around here so I can read it. 35/20 amps, whereas these ones are 40 amps, but these ones are smaller, so I'm wondering if they'll hold up as well. But seeing as these are probably legitimate relays and those are probably counterfeit relays, this one is probably going to work just fine. And the other thing I noticed is the fuse block mounting. This one's going to be really inconvenient to mount. It's like it's almost designed to fit in a hole in a plate or something with the wires coming out of it like that. Like, I don't see a good way of mounting it. I'll have to build like some L brackets and mount it off of these holes or something. So that's a little inconvenient, or like I said, cut a hole in a plate and screw it in with these 2 screws. Relays are bigger on this one and not built into the fuse box. Nice thing about the BP one is it has this plate that looks like it's got these 2 little tabs on the bottom of the fuse block that slide into those slots, and then you can just bolt it to your firewall or wherever is convenient for you. Moving down the harness a bit, on the BP harness, all your underdash wires are labeled, so there's no question. Also, this one comes with fan relay control wires, which I'm not 100% sure that does. I don't think it does, but this one's already wired for your electric fan controls. On the Chinese harness, none of this is labeled, and again, the quality of the wire is, I'm not going to say questionable, but I'm confident this is a higher quality wire than that is. There's your grommets that go through the firewall. Both come with extra length so you can mount your ECM inside the cab. Yeah, like I mentioned before, the Chinese harness doesn't have any fusible links or protection. These 2 wires go on the post on your starter, and that's where the whole harness gets its power. And I've peeled the cover back, and there's no fusible links or anything there. So, like I said, Bill with BP was nice enough to send a couple fusible links along. So we're basically going to cut the end off there and crimp these on, so we've got protection in case one of these wires rubs against the frame or a sharp edge or something and shorts out. If you don't have a fuse there, you could melt down your whole wiring assembly and have a bad day. So whereas this one, it looks like it's only got 1 power lead rather than 2 there, but, and I can't really pull this cover back, but you can feel right there is the splice. So this definitely has one of these fusible links in there that'll protect your wiring if that main power wire shorts out. Here's your injector wiring. I just plugged in a truck injector there. That's the other thing that stood out to me. Genuine Delphi connectors versus knockoff, and these connectors just look and feel cheaper and like they break easier. So genuine Delphi connectors. Does look like things are laid out slightly different, but I'll have to look at the manual. It may just be designed to be routed slightly differently through the engine. Other than that, here's your coil banks, and again, everything's labeled, and crank position sensor. This will be your mass airflow sensor. AC pressure transducer. I don't think there is one of those on the Chinese harness, so not a big deal for me because I probably won't be running AC anyways, but if you're running AC, the BP harness has provisions for that. That's all the Chinese wiring harness. The coil pack connectors and injector connectors on both sides here. Map sensor, I believe that is. Or no, that's your cam position sensor. That's your map sensor. And again, much easier to, on the BP one, everything's labeled. And again, genuine Delphi connector versus Probably not genuine connector. O2 sensors. That's one thing that's different. Different style of plug. That is, yeah. That's the style of O2 connector plug on the Chinese harness. And that is the style on the BP harness. It'll just be, if these aren't the right connectors, or if these aren't the right connectors, it'll just be a matter of buying the proper O2 sensor to match up with it. So either way, it's not a big deal. Like I mentioned in the previous video, wire colors on this O2 wiring don't match up with what's in the manual for the Chinese harness. Whereas I haven't looked through the manual yet, but based on Bill's attention to detail that I've seen so far, I'm fairly confident that the wire colors in the manual will match and probably be easier to understand and troubleshoot. Coming to the end here, another difference is on the 4L80E connector. The BP one has this kind of 90-degree cover to support and provide some strain relief, and nothing on there. But again, not a huge deal. I can probably put a strap or something around there to provide some strain relief and keep those wires from flexing as you're driving down the road. So that is the basic overview of the differences between the two. Now I'd kind of like to, I think I'm going to cut the heat shrink off and have a look at the crimp quality on this Chinese harness versus the crimp quality on the BP harness. And I may even see if we can get at the injector wiring splice on this Chinese harness and kind of compare it. We'll take this ultrasonic welded splice out of the bag and see what kind of comparisons we can make there. All right, so just having a look at the comparison of the crimps here. First thing I notice is the thickness of the lug that's crimped on the end is really thin for the China harness and quite a bit thicker and sturdier for the BP harness. The other thing is you can see on the China harness, the insulation basically extends too far and a little bit of it is pinched underneath the part that should only be going onto the copper of the wire. So can't guarantee that that's making a solid connection to the copper there if a bit of the insulation is pinched under there. Whereas you can see on this one, it's done properly and the insulation ends where it's supposed to. And there's a good solid crimp onto the copper. And here's a look at one of the smaller crimps that would be like on one of the sensor connectors or whatever. So, and one thing I noticed on another one of the BP Automotive videos is Bill has all the specs sheets from Delphi, and part of their QC process is measuring like the height and the depth of the crimp and making sure, like, Delphi has fairly tight tolerances of what the thickness and width are of these crimps, and you can see a fairly significant difference in the width of the crimp. I'm looking at the depth of it. They look similar, but I'm fairly confident that this is a better splice, and because it's all been QC'd and passed and tested that it meets the Delphi specs, that just like a harness you would order from GM or the harness that came on the engine originally would have. So alright guys, so I've uncovered the point in the China harness here of where the injector power splice is. And I'm going to peel that tape off there in a second, but just wanted to point out the difference in insulation here. On the China harness, it's basically just wrapped in what looks like electrical tape, whereas on the BP harness, it uses this shrink sleeve with like an adhesive sealant type stuff inside. So that's going to be a lot more secure insulation than that tape is. So let's get this tape off of there and have a look at the splice and compare it to the bare BP splice. All right, so I got that tape taken off that splice there, and you can see there's, I think, 5 pink wires going in the one side and 1 pink wire going out the other side, and then just a brass colored crimp. It seems to be done adequately, like it'll do the job. But this is that ultrasonic welded splice, and I don't know exactly how it works, but basically he's got a machine that just basically uses ultrasonic welding to combine all the conductors into one solid block of copper. So there's not even a crimp connector or anything on there. It's just basically turned into a solid chunk of copper. So between that and the better insulation, I feel like that's going to be a more secure splice. So I think those are about all the main differences I can see between these two harnesses. So I'm going to let you guys make the final decision for yourselves, but I've kind of tried to show you as objectively as possible the differences I see between these two harnesses. And like I say, there's $260 price difference, $610 for the BP Automotive harness, $350 for the China harness. I've paid for them both myself, and I know for my money, this is the one I'm going to be putting on my LQ4 when it goes into my Suburban, and I'm going to keep this one for running on my engine stand and that kind of thing. So if you guys want to see me actually put these harnesses on my LQ4 engine and run them, I will put a link to the video here when it's available. Hey guys, just wanted to add one last thought. If you're interested in either one of these harnesses, both the companies that make them, like the guys are in our Facebook group. Nathan Wei is the guy that ships the Chinese harness, and Bill Hillock is the owner of BP Automotive, and they both said they're willing to answer any questions you guys might have about these harnesses. So if that's something you're interested in, look them up. And that's all for now. We'll see you on the next one.